All right, everybody, welcome. It's 2 o'clock by my computer here, so we'll just get the meeting started. Hello, welcome to the special meeting of the Turlock Subbasin Technical Advisory Committees. I'll be your host. My name's Herb Smart, and I'm a member of the TAC. Just a couple quick rules from me, or ground rules, and then we'll just jump into the leadership running the meeting. Please don't put the call on hold. Please go on mute unless you wish to speak. Don't forget to unmute yourself. Go ahead and rename yourself if you choose. We have plenty of public comment time, plenty of options available. We have a public participation item if you want to talk about an item that's not listed on the agenda. And then we have ample time during discussion for items that are listed on the agenda as well. And so there's, you could use the chat feature, you could raise your hand, you could politely interrupt the speaker at the right time. I think we're all getting pretty good at when to do that and when not to do that. And so that's available for you. The meeting is being recorded right now and will be posted shortly thereafter on our website and our YouTube page. And we have the meeting materials available on turlockgroundwater.org. The pre-slides that you saw, if you came a little bit early, that show before every meeting are up there, kind of to document things. The presentation that's going to be presented from the Todd Groundwater team later today is also up there, and the agenda as well. So that's all I have. Welcome everybody, and I'll kick everything over and put up the agenda and let the TAC leadership present.
All right, Herb, thank you. Welcome everybody to the special meeting of the Joint Technical Advisory Committees of the West Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency and the East Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. I'm going to call to order first just to make sure we have a quorum. We need 7 agency representatives for the West Turlock Subbasin. So let me go through, see who we have, and I can't do both at the same time, so I'll just call out agencies and see how we're doing. Is anyone here from Keys? Michelle? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here, Michael.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good to see you. And then we have anyone from Hillmark? Curtis, are you on? Delhi County Water District?
Present.
Okay, wonderful. Leah, City of Houston?
Houston's here.
Okay, City of Turlock?
Here.
Okay.
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Siri, okay. San Luis County? Merced County?
You got Brody here.
Hey, Brody. Daenerys, David Odom?
Yeah, I'm here, Michael.
Hey, David. And Turlock Irrigation District, we have Herb, Debbie. Anyone else from TID? Okay. And so Karen, City of Ceres?
Yep.
Is somebody there? Hey, Karen.
Sam.
And anyone from the City of Modesto?
Michael, you know what? I might have answered for someone else earlier because when the first person you called, I said, "Here I am." I heard my name. You must have said something else.
You're faking for Michelle Keys. So Keys is not here, but
Modesto.
Oh, I'm here, and I think I'm causing havoc, guys. Let me mute this thing.
Okay. Well, welcome, Michelle. So we have more than a quorum. Well, we have a quorum for the West Turlock Subbasin GSA. So I'll call a meeting to order at 2:05 on this Thursday afternoon, January 14th. Kevin, you want to call to order the Eastside Technical Advisory Committee?
Sure, happy to do so. Is Dennis here?
Yes.
Thanks, Dennis. How about Walt?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. We have a quorum. Call a meeting.
Wonderful. Okay. So our first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. This is the approval of the December 17th, 2020 meeting, the special meeting. So those were sent out earlier in the week. Tara, thank you for doing that. Nice job. Everyone's had a chance to review those. Are there any amendments? If not, I would take a motion by the West Turlock TAC first to approve those minutes from December 17th.
Michael, this is Karen with Series. I just have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Lacey back to vice chair?
We need to discuss it. Yes, the way I understand the reading from the action taken by the board was that you would be vice chair while Lacey was on a leave of absence. As far as I can tell, Lacey's back from her leave of absence. And so it would automatically default back to Lacey. But again, there's no specific timeline for that. And if it depends if Lacey's ready to take on that responsibility and or you need to get out of that responsibility. So.
Okay, I was just curious.
Right.
I had spoken to Lacey about it, but maybe I'll reach out to her.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't think any additional action is needed by the board. It's just understanding between the folks on the West Turlock.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure the minutes were correct. Okay, so I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, so Karen motion to approve. Do I have a second?
This is Ally Martin. I'll second.
Okay, second by the City of Turlock. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. So our minutes for the West Turlock TAC for December 17th stand approved. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you. Folks on the east, have you had a chance to look at the minutes? Will somebody make a motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, this Dennis, I'll move to accept them.
Thank you, Dan.
Minutes.
Walt seconds. Thank you, Walt. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Over to item number 5, public participation. This is the time set aside for members of the public to directly address the Technical Advisory Committee on any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Technical Advisory Committee. So you can address this on any item right now. If it's an items on the agenda, you can wait till that time or address this now. So with that public participation, anybody would like to speak?
Yes, Michael, I'd like to speak briefly. This is Milt Treeweiler.
Go ahead, Milt, floor is yours.
Okay, yes, Milt Treeweiler, Turlock citizen. As of Tuesday, Olivia Kramer from the TID, who's the TID analyst, told us at the meeting that the rainfall levels are only 37.9% of normal for this year. And she pointed out that the next 16 days, the forecast does not look good. And if the 16-day forecast remains, it's possible that we will have the driest year on record with just 23% of normal water levels. And that will exceed the 1977, which is currently the lowest water level ever. To date, but this year could exceed that. She said forecasts are more volatile this year than in the past. And I wanted to point out one other record. She didn't mention this. This is what I saw online. Another record that was set this year, that ocean temperatures in 2020 reached an all-time high as far as records go back. And you probably saw that in the newscasts. Our oceans are now the warmest they've been since record keeping began. And just point out something, a general thing here. Every condition the scientists have predicted in 2000 is taking place. So their predictions, and some of their predictions are actually lower than what is happening. So in other words, we're a little worse off in some areas than what they had predicted. But everything they predicted is happening. And we want to just keep this in mind as we go on with our groundwater sustainability work. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Milt. Appreciate your comments. And as you know, climate change is one of the things we do have to look at as we're putting the GSP together. Any other comments from the members of the public under public participation? Okay, hearing nobody else, I will move on to item number 6, budget. Michael Clipper, treasurer of the West Turlock Subbasin GSA, will give us an overview of the West Turlock's future expenditures and revenues. So Michael, over to you.
Okay, everyone, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Ending December 31st, we had $181,369 $30 in the West Turlock account. All dues are received and deposited, and I'm happy to note no one's check bounced. So we're in pretty good shape. We do have a few outstanding checks and invoices that are being processed, so that I expect that in the next month or so to go down a little bit, but we're doing good. Moving over to the basin account, we have, for the same time period, December 31st, we had a balance of $1,082,218.48. We've received all contributions towards the grants except one entity is working on it now. So we're in pretty good shape there. And then, and likewise, we have a few invoices that are being processed or are outstanding. So, any questions?
Okay, sounds like no questions, Michael. So over to you, Kevin, for East Turlock.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, on the east side, nothing new to report. The numbers are the same as they appeared in December. Nothing critical happened over the holidays. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin? Okay, so moving on to item number 7, Groundwater Sustainability Plan Development. This is led by Phyllis Stemmen, our consultant with Todd Groundwater, to talk about sustainable management criteria and the depletion of interconnected surface water sustainability indicator. So Phyllis, this time turn it over to you.
I think we have
Michael?
one more agenda item in front of me here.
Okay. And I've got the
We
other.
made it.
Sorry, I've got the
Yeah,
other
late
agenda.
reason.
I apologize.
No worries.
We'll keep you.
Okay, thank you, Herb. Letter of support, that's right. We even worked on this morning, so I should know, right? I'm getting old, that's the problem. Okay, item number 7, to correct everybody, is a letter of support. So consider recommending the sustainability agencies provide a letter of support to the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District for their grant application to fund a watershed coordinator. Debbie, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I received an email from the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District this week indicating that they were planning to apply for a grant next week to fund a watershed coordinator for the East Stanislaus Resource Conservation District area, which covers the eastern portion of the Turlock Subbasin, as well as, I believe, the Modesto Subbasin, so the other portions of eastern Stanislaus County, east of the San Joaquin River. And so we developed a draft letter this week and revised the agenda for this special meeting to incorporate this letter of support for the TAC consideration. Herb, could you put it up on the screen? Oh, thank you so much. So this would be a grant. It's a Water Smart grant by the Bureau of Reclamation, and again, it's to fund a watershed coordinator for a portion of our subbasin. And so I'd like to kind of leave it open for maybe Herb could kind of scroll through so people could take a look at the letter if there's an interest, or we can have discussion and a recommendation from the group. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. I don't have a lot of detail on the grant and the timeline and all of that. But I do think it would be helpful to have a watershed coordinator, as we move forward with sustainable groundwater management and implementing the GSP and what have you.
Yeah, Debbie, this is Kevin. I'll add in that there doesn't appear to be any financial impact to anybody involved in either the West or the East Turlock Subbasin GSA. These are simply support services that we've had in the past, but we currently do not have. And this would provide additional opportunity for sharing information in the San Joaquin Valley.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Kevin. That was helpful.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Anything else from Herb or Debbie? If not, we'll take any questions from the TAC or the public.
I would recommend if we need separate motions, we could have them, but a motion from both the East and the West, maybe for one motion to authorize Michael and I to sign this letter on behalf of both TACs.
Sounds good to me. Do we have a second?
I'll second Karen, City of Series.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, so just as a joint motion, any other discussion before we take a vote? Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Kevin and Karen, all those in favor signal for signing the letter of support to the East Stanislaus RCD, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Michael, this is Allie. The agenda didn't clarify this as an action item. I'm just clarifying for Tara as far as minute taking that this is something that we can take action on.
Thank you, Ali. So let me, Herb, you pull up the agenda, see how it was written. We'll just do it as I would consider recommending.
Does it not say that? Consider recommending. Yeah.
So Ali, you want to provide further clarification? It's a recommendation.
We have Lauren Lane on the line, and I don't know if Valerie's on the line, but I think they could probably give us their blessing.
I'm on. This is Valerie. I don't know if this falls into the category of delegation of signing. There was a delegation by, I know at least the West Turlock board, to allow the TAC to sign things on behalf of the GSA that were letters of support for local groundwater matters similar to this. I don't have it in front of me and I forget the wording, but when I read this, my sense is that falls under that delegation. And I suppose the action is to consider recommending the GSAs provide the letter of support. So I guess those are my thoughts. Debbie or Michael, I don't remember if you recall the language of that delegation better than I do, but that's my sense. But I'm happy to hear any sort of concerns about not agendizing an action item.
Yeah, I apologize. I forgot that that we had worded it this way, and then we put the letter as a signature from the TAC. I think, if I recall correctly, and maybe Herb, you could help on this, that I think we were authorized to send letters of support as long as it was a unanimous, from the TAC, that there wasn't anyone who had concerns with respect to that. Do you remember that? I can.
That was it, Debbie. That's exactly it.
Yeah, that's what I recall too. That essentially, and keep in mind, the way we've drafted the letter currently is it's coming from the Technical Advisory Committee. So it's coming from Michael from the west and Kevin from the east. And so it's a letter from the committee itself. So we would, I think, be relatively in the clear, in my non-legal opinion, of it being from that extent. And I know what Valerie was talking about was we are authorized, at least in the West. I remember the language is there. I can't remember the specificity of it. It was 2 years ago, but it basically authorized the West Turlock Subbasin TAC as an entity to send letters of support on behalf of the GSA board, the West GSA board, at the discretion of the TAC chair, the West Turlock Subbasin GSA TAC chair. So it's specific to the West. I'm sure Kevin may have something similar in place that they're allowed to do. And so that's kind of the framework for that too. And I'll just leave it at that because that's the extent of my non-legal expertise.
So is the issue the wording here that says that we would be recommending that the GSA provide the support? In other words, should it be signed by the GSA board chairs as opposed to the TAC chair? Is that the issue at hand?
Just if the language was in such a way as to make an action vote on this item, we're fine. I just like to throw a wrench in the proceedings and see what happens.
This is Lauren Lane. I think the fact that it says consider recommending shows that there was some intent to have an action there. So I think you're fine with the path that you're proceeding on if Valerie doesn't disagree.
No, I think that's fine. And technically we don't take joint actions, but there was no opposition. So it's, I think it's an action by both the West and the East, technically, but yeah.
And I'll just add, historically, I think it's just kind of a nature of the way that we develop the agenda for this meeting. The items are, itemed in order, as opposed to like sometimes how traditionally, a lot of boards have, public comment, consent items, then action items, then workshops or reports. And so I think I could see where Allie historically would say, like, I really would like to see the word take action or form action somewhere in there. But I think that in some extent, the verb recommending kind of is that type of action that I think Lauren and Valerie were referencing.
And I have to apologize. Different agencies have different formats that they use for their agendas, and so that may be a part of it as well. And I wasn't conforming to the proper agenda format, so I apologize for that.
No apology needed, but next time we'll focus on taking more of a action-oriented verb or something when we put these items on there, so it's a little bit clearer. So I thank everybody for the clarifications. I thank the two attorneys for weighing in. With that, I think we're comfortable moving ahead. So I think we had the motion, the second. We haven't had a vote yet, right? Or did we vote? Can't remember.
Yeah, you voted and nobody objected.
Okay, so we're good to go. The letter of support will be signed by Kevin and I, and we'll go from there. So thanks everybody for helping us with that. And again, like I said, in the future, we'll be very careful how we word things. This was a late breaking request from East Stanislaus, and it was something that we felt trying to help out another local agency to do something good for our region. So there we go. All right, on to item number 8. The groundwater sustainability plan development. So again, over to you now, Phyllis, to talk about sustainable management criteria and depletion of interconnected surface water. So thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks everyone. I enjoy seeing everyone's face and name again. Happy New Year to you all. When we met in December, we began to talk about the results of the baseline modeling. And this was, as a reminder, a projection 50 years into the future using our current situation with respect to water supply and demand going forward to begin to predict future impacts without any management actions. It gives us an opportunity to actually target what management actions we want to suggest for our plan. And so today, I recognized that one of the things that we talked about in December, the interconnected surface water sustainability indicator, really hadn't been fleshed out as well with this TAC group as the other indicators. In other words, the previous TAC discussions have really focused on those first 5 sustainability indicators that are shown here. All 6 of them are shown here on this slide. And the one that we saw and talked about at some extent in December was the depletion of interconnected surface water. So I wanted to at least provide some background information, maybe some of the regulatory requirements today to get us all on equal footing with the other sustainability indicators. So my summary there says that our previous TAC had focused on those first 5 sustainability indicators, but that our baseline model that we talked about in December was used to estimate future impacts for all of these indicators. We reviewed guidance for depletion of interconnected surface water only briefly, so I am providing additional information on that today. And we will need to coordinate with surface water right holders in the subbasin on this issue, and that process is ongoing. So as we go through this presentation, I thought sometimes it's helpful to see some definitions first. So I have 2 definitions to share with you. The first is the sigma definition of undesirable results associated with surface water, the surface water definition. I'm sorry, did I go right past that? I sure did. And so, oops, I see. My computer is a little unstable here. Let's see if I can get to the second slide and hold it. There we go. So the sigma defines undesirable results for this indicator as depletions of interconnected surface water that have significant and unreasonable adverse impacts on beneficial uses of the surface water. And then to just get us on the same page of what is actually interconnected surface water, not having good luck with moving forward here. I've also included the regulatory definition of that. Interconnected surface water is defined as surface water that is hydraulically connected at any point by a continuous saturated zone to the underlying aquifer and the overlying surface water, and recognizing that the overlying surface water is not completely depleted. And so I always think it's nice to have a little picture to see what those words actually look like. So I've included on this next slide some conceptual cartoons, 3 of them at the top of this slide that show a conceptualization of gaining stream, one of losing stream, and then one that has lost so much water out of the channel that it is no longer saturated between the bottom of the channel and the top of the groundwater table. And so this is sort of transitioning from a gaining stream to a disconnected stream in these 3 diagrams. Our historical water budget results suggested that the Tuolumne and the San Joaquin rivers, 2 of our subbasin river boundaries, were actually net gaining streams, and that the Merced River was a slightly losing stream on average. So those were the results from our historical water budget. But when we projected current conditions into the future for 50 years, our projected future baseline suggests some changes might occur, that the Tuolumne would likely transition to a slightly losing stream, and that the Merced River, which was already a losing stream on average, would be further depleted in that 50-year baseline. Streamflow depletion provides a benefit to the groundwater supply. Streamflow depletion typically means that water is again lost from the river system through the channel bottom into the groundwater system. So it is a net plus to groundwater, but it could potentially affect surface water. And it could affect it primarily in 2 ways. It can affect surface water rights holders and their beneficial use of surface water, and then also potential environmental uses of the surface water. So those are the two things that I've got a few pieces of information for you on today. But first, let's take a look at the results of the baseline with respect to these terms of gaining and losing stream.
Can I interrupt, Phyllis, before you move on?
Yes, please, please.
Yeah, you know, the inclusion of ecosystems there, that really doesn't match the previous description there of affecting, impacting surface right usage. Do you see the inconsistency that I'm talking about?
Just that there's no sort of state mandated water right assigned to the environmental use. Is that what you're thinking of? Yeah. I'm going forward for on this last bullet here, just from some guidance documents that suggest that the GSP needs to consider the GDEs and the impacts of that with respect to the interconnected surface water. So I've probably misworded that a bit, Kevin. I apologize for that.
I just wanted to point that out. That I just noticed it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for doing that, and thank you so much for participating. I get to going like crazy on these slides, and if anyone has any comments or any suggestions or anything that you'd like to discuss as we move forward, I don't have my typical huge number of slides that I'm trying to get through today. So please feel free to interrupt me, and discussion is more than welcome on this. This is a topic that I'm actually learning something about as well. So great. Our results from our baseline, as I was saying, I'm having a little difficulty here with the computer, so we'll keep this moving along. Okay, so these two displays were actually shown at our December meeting, and they show the three river courses around our subbasin, the Tuolumne River to the north, the San Joaquin to the west, and the Merced to the south. And what we have here are dots that are shown on points or nodes, model nodes, along each of these river courses. And each one of these points represents a condition of whether or not the river is actually providing water to the groundwater system or is receiving water from the groundwater system on a net basis over time. So one of the things I'd like to point out is that these conditions change. It's very dynamic, and these conditions change over time. So what we're showing here is a net. So for example, there could be a dot that is colored, for example, blue and indicated as gaining. But in reality, that dot could be green at times. In other words, mixed between the two, losing and gaining, and it could even be losing in some cases. But what we have done is take a look at the net effect of each one of those dots over time and represented those on these two maps for various time periods. And so the historical simulation that's shown is just the last 10 years or so of the historical water budget time period. And then we have the first 10 years of the baseline simulation, and we're starting to see what changes are occurring with respect to each one of the river courses at various locations along the river course. And one of the things that you can do here is to begin to look at, for example, on the Tuolumne, you can see this area downstream of Waterford and Hickman had historically been mostly gaining. And then that's sort of changing to a more mixed condition. That means it gains sometimes and loses sometimes. And the way that the information is set up moving between a blue dot and a green dot, for example, is really a little arbitrary, and it's really quite high. So for example, when you see a shift from blue to green, sometimes that doesn't mean anything more than it was more than 85% gaining during the entire time period, and now it has become 75% gaining over the entire time period to become mixed. So this can happen it's not quite the sudden shift that you would think. We're categorizing everything into just 3 dots here, but in reality, this is a very dynamic system, and it changes sometimes over very short periods of time. All of these dots are, again, net losses, net gains, using the integrated surface water groundwater model that we've been using, the C2V SIM model. So when
Phyllis,
yes.
this is Isham. So the southeast corner of the subbasin, Turlock subbasin, and I'm starting all the way to the east on the first brown dot.
Yes.
It looks like is that the county line? So that is downstream from McSwain Dam, just immediately. Is that where
yes.
we are? So it's just
Yes.
upstream from Merced Falls, downstream from McSwain Dam.
Yes.
Yeah. So that whole stretch of the river. No, I wouldn't say all the way to the end of the east side, East Turlock Basin. It goes all the way to Schaefer Bridge. I think the road that we see at the southwest corner, I think that's Santa Fe, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be the Cressy
Down
station?
here? Yes, that's here.
Yeah, we are upstream from that. So we have about 24 miles of the river that we have to manage, because our point of compliance is, I would say, 4 miles upstream from Santa Fe, something like that.
Yes.
So that is very important for us. So that we would be very interested in learning what's the impact, where we are today versus what's going to happen. And like you said, you're also learning, but this would be an area of interest for not only the Turlock Basin, but for the Merced Irrigation District. So I'm wearing both hats today. So
Great.
On this. So all right.
Yes. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah. So yeah, we would like to kind of learn more on that.
Great. I appreciate that. I don't have more information with respect to the changes between Cressy and the upstream extent, and then Cressy and the downstream extent today, but we can pull that out of the model for you and work with you on that. The one thing that I do want to point out, however, is looking at the historical time period. This is, again, just the last 10 years of the model and the first 10 years of the baseline model, is that we do seem to increase the recharge along this stretch upstream of Cressy on the Merced River over time, as well as downstream. You can see that if you look from Santa Fe Avenue down to the confluence with the San Joaquin River, that stretch also becomes less blue and green and more orange down here, meaning that we are pulling more and more water out of the Merced River system into the groundwater basin. The San Joaquin River, FYI, appears to change a bit. You can see that generally in the historical simulation, it is more blue and there are more greens that you can see in the baseline simulation as we get in there, but the amounts are not quite as much, and we can look at this as we go forward. The other thing to think about is this, as we begin to look at some numbers and some different stream courses, is how much water is actually flowing in the river. The San Joaquin is, the flow is something on the order of more than 4 million acre feet. So when you compare the changes that we see in the Turlock subbasin to the total flow in the river, it isn't quite as large as it is percentage-wise on some of the other streams. Okay, and then also we looked in December at the flow duration curves, and so I've presented both of those, one on the Tuolumne River at Modesto and another on the Merced River. This is at Stevenson, Hisham, so this is a little downstream of where you were focused. But the modeling indicates that we have projected baseline flows in both the Tuolumne and the Merced that are lower than historical flows. And so the way that we look at these charts, we've got a logarithmic y-axis here that are flows in cubic feet per second. And then we have a time shown on this x-axis, and it's shown by percent exceedance. So the way that you read these flow duration curves is that you can see that at this particular point, for example, we might be looking at something on the order of an average flow in the river of, say, I don't know, 700 or 800 cubic feet per second. And then we can read off of the x-axis that that flow occurs more than 40% of the time in the river. So it just gives you an idea of sort of how large these streams are. And it helps us in our modeling because we can see where it is that we aren't well representing the flows in the river. For example, we have the red line and the dashed line, which show that we were pretty well calibrated with respect to our historical conditions and the absolute readings that we have on the river. So we felt that we had a pretty good tool with respect to analyzing what was going on in the river. And the blue is the baseline results. So you can see in the Tuolumne that, you know, we're really, for these really high flows, we're really still very close. And it's really at the low flow time periods where we begin to see that increase in stream depletion. And similarly in the Merced, when flows are below several hundred CFS in the river, that's where we actually begin to see more and more groundwater recharge. So it's these low flow components that we are seeing more recharge and more losses for. Because this exceed, yes.
Kevin again.
Yeah.
Why do you think the baseline flow drops off and falls away from those other two in those, you know,
Are you talking about right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is just not picking up once flows drop to this time period. The model is just not matching the observed readings as well as it could through that area.
Yeah, I was wondering what might be causing that. That's all.
Phyllis, this
Yes.
is Milt.
Hi, Milt.
And I just wanted to comment. Actually, that was brought up, or I've observed this over a period of time. Every year we go into a drought year. TID is obviously cutting back the river flow, but that also means that we're not getting as much rain. So the two kind of coincide with each other. When we don't get a lot of rain, we're going to have less flow going down the river, which indicates that, you know, there's more droppage in the aquifer because there's no rain coming into the aquifer or into the area.
Yeah,
and that's the way I would.
It is a bit of a double whammy. I mean, that's obviously why we do see these low flows during dry times, of course.
Yeah, there's also groundwater wells that basically causes that start taking place. But you're looking at an area that is less than 10 CFS. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so on this graph, this is a little messy, so let me walk you through it quickly. So we have the Tuolumne River shown at the top, the San Joaquin in the middle, and the Merced is at the bottom. And this is a graph that shows gains and losses from the river from the point of view of the groundwater system. So when we have, for example, during our historical period on the Tuolumne River, you can see that there's more indications of flows on the negative side than on the positive side. So what that means from the groundwater system is that there's more water being lost out of groundwater and being given to the river. In other words, this is the conditions of base flow. And we see this, as you can see, throughout the historical study period, although as we get into the drought, it decreases a bit as water levels decline. And then in the 50-year baseline period, we see conditions change a bit to where we have more net water as the positive for groundwater. In other words, we're increasing recharge from the river as a result of water level declines beneath the river channel and giving back less water to the river from the groundwater system. So that's sort of how we're looking at these graphs. And if I add up the net of the positives and the negatives on the Tuolumne from the historical period, you get an average of about 35,000 acre feet a year being provided as base flow to the Tuolumne River. And then in the baseline condition, you actually see an increase in the recharge going to groundwater. And as a result of that, the negative number here becomes positive. So in this particular case, between the historical period and the baseline period, streamflow depletion is somewhere around 32,000 or so acre feet a year. With the San Joaquin River, the difference is a little bit less, but the concept is the same. Although we don't really change to recharge, we're still seeing contributions from groundwater to the river overall. Those contributions to base flow in the historical period were about negative 35,000 acre feet a year. And then over the baseline period, a little bit less, about 28,000 acre feet a year. So there's not as much change, again, to the flows in the San Joaquin. Yes.
Sorry, this is Debbie. Is
Debbie.
Is it, going back to the Tuolumne, is it the 35 minus the 3,000? Or is it 35,000 plus an additional almost 4,000 difference?
It's the latter. Thank you very much. I forgot I had a sign change there. Shouldn't do math on the fly.
No worries, just checking. Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. It's in this particular case, it's about 39,000 or so acre feet a year change. And then with the Merced, again, it's a little bit different because during the historical period, we were already seeing net recharge from the Merced River into the groundwater basin, an average of about 17,000 acre feet a year as indicated from the historical period. And that continued and also increased quite a bit, as you can see from the baseline simulation, again, up to about 60,000 acre feet a year being lost from the Merced River back to the groundwater basin. So these are the results of the streamflow depletion that we need to quantify and evaluate for the GSP. Does anybody have any questions on any of this so far?
Phyllis, this is John Lambie.
Hi, John.
Hi. I had a question regarding the structure of the model on the first slides you showed with gaining, losing, and disconnected stream reaches. How many reaches are there that are disconnected?
I don't know the answer to that, John. I'd have to look back at the results of the model, and I don't have that with me. I don't have the channel elevations with me right now.
Well, could you discuss the implications of a stream that's disconnected in a model?
Well, you know, technically you have changes with respect to how much water, where the water can go, the amount of mounding, and how much water has room for recharge back into the aquifer system. But with respect to the model, you know, it's all controlled by the water level that's in the groundwater system right beneath that one surface water node.
Right. In my understanding, when a stream has become disconnected, it can only leak at whatever rate it leaks at. It's no longer gradient dependent. So it's relatively important to understand which nodes have been regarded as disconnected and how those are handled in the model. And I believe I've said before, a natural stream system is always disconnected at the mountain front. It's not a man-made condition. That's the way it works in nature. So it's fairly important. As I recall, the early presentations of the model demonstrated the Merced was historically disconnected in its upper reaches. So I'd really like to hear about that in maybe a subsequent presentation as to which reaches are disconnected at the outset and which ones become disconnected during the baseline simulation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point, John. This is Kevin again, Phyllis. So with this slide you have up currently,
Oops, sorry.
and you took it away on me.
I'm so sorry. I have a new computer system, and it has a little bit of a mind of its own.
Oh yeah, I saw your note that you had a little problem there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are always frustrating. Anyhow, what I wanted to point out, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, is that, you know, I have to remember, and I think everybody has to remember, that what we've done here is we've looked at the historical period, or what your technical people have done is looked at the historical period and then put the baseline over that, assuming no actions were done. And what this shows me is that if we do not take any actions, if we do not implement any management actions to address this problem, then we could have a negative impact due to stream aquifer interaction to surface water users. I mean,
Well said. Well said. Yes, perfect. And I think I have a slide that tries to say that right at the end as well. But yes, thank you for pointing that out now. It's good to remember that.
right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And then I did include some information here about groundwater dependent ecosystems. You might recall that we provided an update to the TAC a few sessions back. And this just summarizes the work that was done. We developed a multifaceted approach to do the assessment of what we are calling the NCAG vegetation and wetland areas. This again is shown at the right. This is the summary of the natural communities commonly associated with groundwater. That's what that NCAG stands for. A data set and online web viewer that was provided to us by the Department of Water Resources specifically for use in the GSP. And the work focused on looking at the several thousand areas of vegetation and wetlands that had been identified as potential GDEs by the Nature Conservancy and others that participated in the study of putting the information together. And we particularly looked at areas of consistently deep groundwater, considering fluctuations, of course, over time, and also applied the use of the TNC online pulse tool to review any changes to the vegetative health and to possibly look at correlation to precipitation. In other words, is this really a groundwater system, or is this simply being provided by surface water? And then also looking at artificial or human-sourced water supply that was being provided to the vegetation that, again, was unlikely to be groundwater supplied. And this involved things like canal spills or man-made ponds, or even some irrigation that was being done around wastewater treatment plants. And so through that process of elimination, we came up with sort of potential GDEs left for evaluation. And a shout out to Karen. I know she's on the phone today. She did an excellent job. Karen is doing graduate work in natural resources through Oregon State University, so she comes well equipped to look at this. And she actually volunteered. She's also wears another hat. She's a Series Public Works Superintendent, and she volunteered here. So not only did we bring her technical skills to the process, but we also had her local expertise. And through that elimination process, ended up with the map that I've got on this second slide, which is shown here, leaving about 1,100 areas of vegetation and potential wetlands that could potentially be fed, at least in some points in time, by groundwater. So cut the number of polygons that had been originally identified almost in half here. So that was a helpful process. But it does leave a lot of the GDEs around the river boundaries. And so again, the regulations require that these be identified, and we are sort of showing these with respect to the whole concept of interconnected surface water today. Any questions on any of that?
hi, Phyllis. This is Debbie again.
Yeah.
Could you, can you share, at least, and you're not right now, but in the coming weeks, the files showing kind of the wetlands within the subbasin, it isn't kind of adjacent to the river, because there might be there's just a few red wetland areas that are kind of on the western side of the West Turlock, and
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, I'd like to look into those a little more and make sure we kind of understand what those are.
Yes, thank you very much. I had not forgotten that you had volunteered to do that, and we will get that information to you. Thank you.
And this is Karen here. Now that I see those red dots too, I need to take a look as well. Those are likely around man-made structures and should have been eliminated, so I need to take a look. Phyllis must be fancy with her highlighting pen on her width of lines here, so it's much more obvious.
Yeah, I have exaggerated. These are very narrow. These dots are actually very narrow and very small. I did increase the width in a very exaggerated way, just so we could begin to see where, because I wanted, at least for the purposes of this, to just be illustrative of where the remaining polygons are located.
Phyllis,
well, but that's helpful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Phyllis, John here again with a question. The wetlands and such, are they simulated in the model as riparian habitat?
No.
So there's no water use associated with these in the model explicitly?
No, it's only along the river boundaries.
Right, but that's where that's designed in that model code.
Right.
So it's not in there as a feature?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Talking a little bit now about some of the guidance for a sustainable management criteria, specifically for assigning a minimum threshold to interconnected surface water. The regulations, which I've just sort of shown the title there so we can remember where all of this is from. The regulations say that the minimum threshold for the interconnected surface water sustainability indicator shall be the rate or volume of surface water depletions caused by groundwater use that has adverse impacts on surface water beneficial uses and that may lead to undesirable results. The regulations further say that the MT should be supported by two things. One being the location, quantity, and timing of the depletions, and two being a description of the groundwater and surface water model used to quantify these. So both of these, again, anticipate that the gaining and losing reaches and the total depletions that we see over time are coming from an integrated surface water groundwater model. The BMP, the Best Management Practices document that was developed by the Department of Water Resources for sustainable management criteria, the cover of which is shown here on the right of this slide, provides a list of considerations to also incorporate into the analysis when selecting a minimum threshold for this indicator. And those questions are reproduced here on this slide. What are the historical rates of stream depletion for the different water year types, which we can certainly get from the model? What is the uncertainty associated with streamflow depletion estimates from these analytical or numerical tools in this case? What's the proximity of pumping to the streams? Where are the GDEs in the subbasin? We just looked at that in the previous map. What are the agricultural and municipal surface water needs in the subbasin? We certainly talked quite a bit about that and for both of the water budgets. And what are the state or federally mandated flow requirements for in-stream flows for these rivers? So those are the things that are being considered with respect to the sustainable management criteria for this indicator. And there's an example in the BMP, and sometimes I think it's helpful to sort of see what that looks like. So what we have here is a theoretical groundwater basin that has a river boundary, and the river depletion is being measured along the groundwater basin boundary from this location to this location. And during that reach of the river, there's streamflow depletion that is occurring over time, and that's indicated by this blue line. This is, as we just learned in the previous slide, this can be a volume or a rate of depletion, but what it suggests is that this amount of depletion is going up over time. And at some point, the GSAs in this particular example determined that this level is something that creates an undesirable result for this particular groundwater basin. And so an MT has been selected at this level, whatever that is, of the volume or rate of depletion. And recognizing that the depletion has already occurred at higher rates than the MT allows, meaning that they're seeing undesirable results. And as a result of that, the plan, the GSP plan, requires that there be management actions and projects such that this streamflow depletion is decreased over time and brought well below the minimum threshold by the sustainability date. So again, just an example, theoretical example from a nondescript groundwater basin in the BMP. The BMP also suggests that water levels can be used as a proxy for the volume or the rate of surface water depletions in these streams. And I put this here because it could be that since we don't have a detailed monitoring network in place right now with respect to monitoring streamflow depletions per se, that we may want to consider looking at water levels as a proxy in the short term to the volume or the rate of depletion for this sustainability indicator. And there's sort of two ways to go about this. One is to look at groundwater elevations that can be correlated directly to the volume or the rate of depletion that would potentially result in an undesirable result. In other words, when we hit this rate of streamflow depletion, do we have water levels that are correlating to that, to this overall general trend? And can we use certain water levels in monitoring wells or in other wells near the river to help us know that we are at that minimum threshold? So that's sort of a straightforward way to look at using water levels as a proxy from water level wells where you can establish a correlation between the volume and the rate to the water level. But there's a sort of indirect method that the BMP suggests is also a reasonable approach for this, and that's simply to demonstrate that your MT that you've selected for your chronic lowering of water levels, the other sustainability indicator that you're also going to be selecting sustainable management criteria for, that minimum threshold for that sustainability indicator can be shown to be sufficiently protective of surface water as well. And so you get sort of a 2-for-1 there by selecting an MT for the chronic lowering of water levels that would also be protective of streamflow depletion. Does anybody have any questions about the example or anything else that we've covered so far?
Phyllis. Kevin, sorry, I walked on you, Valerie. I think this is fine. I have no objection.
Phyllis, I had a question. This is Valerie. Do you have any sense, I mean, I know we're partially all figuring this out, and the proxy requirements when you're using one sustainability indicator data as a proxy for determining another one. I know that there are requirements, and of course they are not terribly stringent or exacting, so it's hard to guess here, but is it your sense that if we use the proxy for the minimum thresholds for chronic lowering of water levels, we would have to be less, we would have less technical data to talk about interconnection. And one of the things I'm thinking about, and maybe the question from John Lambie is in the back of my head too, is that if we don't have precise areas where we can make a data-driven conclusion that there's interconnection, that also means something legally. So there's the issue of getting to sustainability for Sigma, and then there's what happens if you have a completely interconnected system and what that relationship between groundwater and surface water is from a legal perspective. So I'm just wondering, do you think that we're less likely to get kind of a decision from DWR that we're adequate if we use the proxy, which would allow us to not be quite as specific about our points of interconnection? And I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on that, if you think anything I said was not right or wasn't in the spirit of doing an adequate GSP. I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, so you know, one of the problems that we have is that when you're selecting a minimum threshold, you have to sort of think about the history and sort of know when you crossed sort of into undesirable results land. And I suspect that we have sort of two tools right now to help us with that. One is the model and one is water levels, because we just don't have as much information with respect to the quantity of streamflow depletion that we would need to sort of do a more detailed assessment of it. So the water levels as a proxy might be something that would be reasonable to, again, use for the short term, but then to do more detailed assessment and monitoring for the future. And in particular, I think one of the things that we're learning now as we explore how the streamflow depletion is affecting surface water rights, and as Hisham pointed out before about points of compliance and the detailed monitoring that would be needed at certain areas, we do have the opportunity to learn more going forward, I think, with a more robust monitoring system. But it's just sort of a matter of what we have right now and what we can do versus sort of what we might want to do for the future. I don't know if I really answered your question very well. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, like, if I know that I'm lucky enough not to have to do this, but if I were sitting down to write the chapters right now and this were the decision between doing a proxy or not, I mean, one of the first things I guess we need to think about is, I assume that if we don't do a proxy, we will need to do separate representative monitoring wells, or at least a subset. So you would write it very differently. You would have to have different monitoring wells. You would have to, I think, be able to have enough data to identify where there's interconnection and where there's not. And then, of course, you're not only talking about rates, but you're talking about rates when it affects beneficial uses. So there's kind of, in my opinion, kind of a compound evaluation of that if you're going to set, if you're going to actually set your own minimum threshold and not use a proxy. I mean, I don't love proxies because I think that you get kind of into a dangerous land where you only really have 2 or 3 sustainability indicators, and I worry that DWR won't love that. But I'm also wary on the other side that if we don't have enough data, if we don't have representative monitoring network for this, and we don't have a really, really good idea of when things are interconnected and not, it does scare me a little bit from a legal perspective to have a plan that says there are sections that are interconnected or sections that are not. That those are, legal conclusions that have legal meaning. So that worries me.
Right. I understand the concern. I will say this, from a groundwater management perspective, it's always very nice to have a more simplistic analysis and a more simplistic way of getting, not a simplistic analysis, I shouldn't have said it that way, a more simplistic set of criteria so that it actually can be achieved in the field, and that you have, you know, sort of a clear and relatively straightforward way to go about it. I don't think there is a problem, and I don't want to speak for DWR. We can certainly ask. I don't know if Amanda's on the call today or not, but she can let us know. My understanding from working with others at DWR is that there's never been a concern about using proxies as long as there is a correlation between the metric that was envisioned originally in the GSP regs and the elevation, for example. You know, for the plans that I've worked on so far, water levels provide a proxy for many of the sustainability indicators, and I've never seen it to be a problem demonstrating that that a level that's protective of one sustainability indicator can't also be protective of the other.
Thanks. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, Phyllis, on the Merced GSP, we are using water levels until we come up with something different.
Right. That's what I've seen most GSPs do.
Hisham, this is Val. Do you mean for you? Obviously, you mean for this interconnected surface water criteria, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Thanks.
So if we find that there are meaningful other ways to measure the sustainability criteria, we would look into that. But until we have enough information, and this is how we started.
And I will just comment, and I know, Valerie, you've looked at a lot of GSPs as well. I haven't seen anyone do anything else with this indicator except for that.
Yeah, I've seen plans that find that there's no interconnection, and therefore they don't have to set a rate or quantity, which I think is different than a proxy scenario. And it does require a certain amount of information for sure. But you're right, I'm trying to remember, but I don't think I've ever seen a monitoring network that includes just wells along a stream course or a minimum threshold based on a rate of depletion that affects beneficial uses of surface water.
Delta Mendota was one. The North Central GSP, I believe, did something a little bit different that didn't involve water levels, but it was because they had the San Joaquin contractors had criteria already for use of surface water, and as a result of that, it was already being sort of monitored and managed by others. And so I think that was one GSP that I remember reading where water level wasn't used as a proxy, but yeah, I think most of the other ones either don't have interconnected surface water or water levels were being used. Okay, just quickly, the last few little slides here. I copied some information. We've talked a little bit about monitoring. I copied some information from the GSP regulations. There's the reference for that on GSP monitoring networks for interconnected surface water. And I've also just included a seepage monitor. I doubt that everyone's going in the direction of installing seepage meters into the stream beds, but we may decide that some of this might be helpful for the future. The GSP regulations actually require that monitoring networks be developed to monitor surface water and groundwater where interconnected, and to characterize the spatial and temporal exchanges between surface water and groundwater, and also to calibrate and apply the tools and methods necessary to calculate the depletions going forward. The monitoring network also has to characterize pretty specific things: surface water discharge, surface water head, and base flow contribution. Also identifying the date and location where ephemeral or intermittent flowing streams occur and where rivers cease to flow if applicable. I don't think that's our case here. We don't have any dry river channels of the 3 river boundaries that we're talking about. The monitoring networks are also recommended to look at temporal changes of variations in discharge over time, of course, and regional groundwater extraction, and to compare the two. And then other factors that may be necessary to identify any adverse impacts associated with the beneficial uses of surface water. And then there are 2 additional guidance documents. I just wanted to include this to be a little more comprehensive on what information is out there with respect to the sustainability indicator. The one on the left is a 2016 document that was put together by the Nature Conservancy with state funding and other participation by other agencies. And in that document, the TNC analyzes streamflow depletion specifically in the Central Valley. And one of the example rivers that they look at in the streamflow depletion is the Merced River. And so I just note that because it shows some historical information that goes back further than the historical information that we have in our water budget information. In the San Joaquin Basin in particular, a lot of the river systems began to transition from net gaining to net losing streams in the mid-1960s. And so the Merced was one of those. C2V-SIM was actually used, the Integrated Surface Water Groundwater Model was used in this analysis, and it's the same model and the same lead modeler, Dr. Ali Tagavi, who's working on your GSP for the Turlock Subbasin. So we do bring some detailed expertise in streamflow depletion for the Central Valley coming forward into this GSP. And then the document on the right is, this is really just sort of notes from a 2-day workshop that occurred. UC Berkeley Law worked with ucwater.org, which is the research arm of Berkeley, that provides just, I think, some useful information, some tables and some recommendations. There's a tabulation of the intersections of SGMA with other laws associated with groundwater surface water interactions. It's a nice table in there to pull in a lot of different information. And the document also does a good job in summarizing some of the legal constraints and opportunities associated with looking at surface water depletions in the context of SGMA. And it provides a construct, is how I've kind of phrased this, for collaboration between the surface water holders, environmental surface water users, and groundwater users. So that I just offer that up as information that's out there. And so that's really the bulk of the information that I have. This is the sort of summary slide that I promised Kevin that I had in the discussion that maybe doesn't quite articulate it as well as he did, but attempts to just again remind all of us that the results of the baseline modeling assume these current conditions that are projected into the future without any additional management actions or projects to mitigate the impacts. And in fact, that's what their usefulness is for. They give us an opportunity to look at future potential impacts to help frame this undesirable results definition, and also to be used as a guide to come up with targeted projects and management actions that allow for, and I wrote here, allow for sustainable management, meaning allow for the avoidance of the undesirable results as defined in that second bullet. So that's, again, just what we're doing right now, how we're using the results that we've got, and what we're going to be doing with them in the future. And then next steps. Obviously, there's some coordination that needs to occur with surface water rights on potential adverse impacts of streamflow depletion. And again, using that information, defining targets for a preliminary analysis of sustainable yield, and then to select sustainable management criteria for not only that indicator, but we still need to do that for the other indicators as well. And then developing projects and management actions to address potential undesirable results, and then considering a monitoring program for the GSP, maybe not only for now, but into the future to incorporate into the plan.
That's an MID project down to the on the picture to the right.
It is. It's your. Thank you. I pulled that from your stormwater management plan. It's recharge basin right at Cressy. So thank you for that. And
Hisham, is that a shark in there, Hisham? What is that?
That's a snorkel.
The deep recharge basin. And then the Tuolumne near Knights Ferry at the top. So those are the two streams that I think that we're going to be needing to coordinate with water rights holders. So thank you, Hisham. We're going to be bringing some information to you and talking to you about it.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. Do we have any more questions for Phyllis? It's very interesting, and obviously we've got lots of work ahead of us, but thank you for the next step slide and kind of having us focus our attention on things we really need to get done, and fairly rapidly too, because this deadline for submitting the GSP will be here before we know it. So any questions for Phyllis?
I just want to say that I'm looking forward to see how the GSP on your side is unfolding. And we are working on the Merced side on data gap analysis. And as you're working and identifying areas that may require reciprocal information on both sides of the, for example, in our case, can be the Merced River. So that would be something I'm looking at and seeing how we could work together on that, because in our budgets and in our ways, as we are moving to implement the plan, we know that we're lacking on information and data. So working with you, seeing what you have, what you need, and how we could reciprocate work on both sides to get good information for both basins. The case of the river depletion is very interesting to us, because monitoring would tell us if the direction of that depletion going. Is it going more to the north or to the south, and how's that behaving?
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis. That was a lot of work but very interesting. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, moving on to number 9, Sigma related updates. It's an opportunity for TAC members to provide updates on issues related to the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And these are the topics we usually talk about: public outreach and grant. And to clarify for the city of Turlock, no action will be taken on these items. Okay, so Herb, public outreach.
Thanks, Michael. Just a couple quick things real quick. I'm reading here from my notes. We've had 2 groundwater lunch hours thus far, the past 3 months, I want to say. Kind of open-ended discussions for people to bring up really good questions and comments about the things we're doing with the GSP. And we have another one that's scheduled for January 29th in a couple weeks. And so you're going to start to see information on that come out, and we'll start to promote that. And it'll be the same format. And actually tomorrow we have a meeting of our tax ad hoc communications group, and we're going to discuss that further. So we'll be discussing that. Secondly, we are the Modesto Subbasin has approached us with they want to do a joint fact sheet. The Modesto Subbasin and the Turlock Subbasin are similar in a lot of ways in terms of a few things, and have some differences as well. But we figured it'd be nice to join in on one. So they reached out to us and asked us for some general information. We provided that. I'm just going to show you. They sent along a document which we're reviewing now, and they've asked for some feedback. And this is just a general fact sheet. It's 2-sided. My intention is I could provide it or work with staff to provide it to the group for any comments. They're looking to have it kind of finalized sometime relatively soon, and so I'll provide it. But you see, it's a designed fact sheet covering some of the things about process and who's in the GSAs, what the GSP is for. So this is just for me to just show you that it's been developed. I'm not expecting you to go through it or make comments now, but that has been developed, and you'll start to see a little bit more about that and have an opportunity to provide some input on that. I have a few things that I'll be mentioning as well, and there's others who have some ideas also. So this next thing is we're working on our water budget video. It's still in its infancy, but it's very similar. Probably going to be a 3-ish minute video covering water budgets in general, what they're for, what they're used for, how they come about, what are the tools they can be related to the GSP. And so we continue to work on that, and that'll be a discussion of our subgroup tomorrow that meets, our ad hoc committee that meets as well. And then lastly, as we get closer, we're in 2021 now, and we're that much closer. I can't remember what the PowerPoint that I created said at the beginning of before the meeting started today, but we have some 300 and something days left until the GSP is required to be turned in. And so we continue to kind of start thinking about what it's like to document our outreach activities and what that looks like in the GSP. And so if anybody that's a member of these meetings, or as we talk to our respective GSAs or with our respective individual member agencies, if we do any sort of outreach or any sort of presentations to our boards or councils, just find a way to get in touch with Debbie or myself or Michael or Phyllis, and that way one of us can put it into a document, so we can start putting it in documentation as we submit our GSP, all the things that have been done to talk about where we're at in the process. And so it's just a call to people on the call that are members of these GSAs and members of the TAC to note that some way. So everything helps, even if it's something that's put in a bill, or if it's a quick 5-minute presentation about process, updating your boards or your councils, that is helpful. So you'll hear that from me many, many times the next year, and probably from Phyllis and others as well. But that's going to be important. So that's it for me, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Herb? Thank you, Herb. Debbie, do you have an update on the grant?
Unmute myself. That works. So yes, a quick update. First of all, so we have 2 grants, as you know. One is funding the installation of some monitoring wells within the Subbasin. East Turlock has identified those, and I believe it is working with their growers on easements and access agreements. The west side has identified some potential locations that we're reaching out to growers, and hope to have a few sites identified. We may try and do, there are 2 multi-completion wells funded under the grant program. And we have identified one location where the city of Turlock has indicated that they would be amenable to installing a well on one of their properties. But we're looking for 2 additional sites because of the potential to install monitoring wells under the TSS funding as well. And so we're kind of looking to see what options there are, and if it's the possibility of having 3 completion wells rather than just the 2 that's funded under the grant program. And so we're pursuing that at this time and looking at what the potential opportunities are. And we'll report back. We're also looking at I have scheduled a meeting with our purchasing department on the bid process, and so we'll be coordinating with the consultant team on that to figure out the best approach and be ready for when we have identified the locations and done the design work, and we can go out to bid for installation. The notice of exemption for the wells is being posted at the counties this week, and is on the website as well. So that's being done. So we're going through the CEQA process at this time, and we'll be prepared to do the installation when everything's in line. So that's the monitoring wells. So things are moving forward with that. The GRAT, which is also funded under that same grant, is continuing to be developed. The committee that's working on that continues to meet with the GRAT consultants. The Todd Groundwater team has done analyses on the groundwater recharge suitability index, and we're kind of at a point now where the GRAT team has kind of walked through a lot of the questions about how the GRAT works and the different types of facilities and opportunities that might be out there. And so we're going to be asking the agencies to provide information and data that that they've been kind of working through to include the individual projects that agencies may be willing to include. And so they're reaching out to all the different agencies to see if there's any other projects and information that needs to be included. So to be expecting to hear from them. I think I sent out an update before Christmas about that as well. So you all should have seen that. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the GSP Development Grant. So one thing that Phyllis and I are working on is putting together a project schedule for how we complete this process for developing the groundwater sustainability plan and meet our deadline in 2022. And so we're going to be pulling in not only the technical work that needs to be done, but the outreach and the other things. And so we'll be bringing a draft of that back to this group so that everyone's kind of familiar with what to expect as we move through this final stage of the process. So I wanted to kind of give everybody an update on that as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Debbie. Any questions for Debbie? Any other updates on Sigma related items? Okay, hearing none. On to item number 10, next meeting. The next regular meeting is scheduled for 2 weeks hence, Thursday, January 28th, 2021. So look for the agenda to be posted. And with that, we will take a motion for adjournment. So for the West Turlock Subbasin, can I get a can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll go ahead, a motion, Maldonado.
Thank you, Leandro. Get a second. Come on, someone.
I'll second Michael Cook, City
Oh,
Modesto.
thank you. City Modesto, Miguel Alvarez. So motion second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Anybody want to keep going? Okay, we're good. We are adjourned on the west side. Kevin, over to you.
And on the east, Dennis, Walt, Brody.
Yes. Yeah, Dennis here. I moved to adjourn.
Thanks, Dennis. We're adjourned.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.